Hello, name's Alan, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today I got a build for you that I assembled a while back, simply because I always wanted to do so. It's a very clunky one, it's focused around a certain Arcana that I felt always lacked pretty much everything. I do like using this, however, every single build I played this with, even as a 5th or sometimes even 6th Arcana, got just so much more inconsistent and chaotic and complicated to operate and look at and grasp that I felt this Arcana, I perceived this Arcana as incredibly bad, incredibly toxic and just chaotic. It just makes everything I put it in worse. So I naturally decided in my great spirit to make a build to try and make this Arcana work, to see whether or not it's actually as terrible as I perceive it to be. Or maybe whether it has certain use cases and what those would be, where it is quite strong, or it has a certain function, it does something really well, and so on and so forth. So with that out of the way, let's get into this little experiment of mine. Today's build is called Horses of the Apocalypse, a clear reference to two things, if I do say so myself, the first of which, if you know Wizard of Legend well, being the horse attire in Wizard of Legend. There are two clearly horse-related relics in the game that combine to the unicorn outfit, if you will, and one clearly horse-related Arcana, which happens to be our main focus today. The Stalwart Defenders, a horse-related, chess-related Arcana casting up to 4 chess pieces. The horse chess piece, which is called a knight in the world of chess, which stomp our enemies to death, into the ground, all the way straight down the hill. It's also a reference to the horsemen of the apocalypse, which I believe is a biblical passage or chapter, anecdote, metaphor, I'm not sure what it is, of which there are also 4. The horsemen conquest, war, famine, and death, which bring great suffering upon the world and introduce it to the end of the world, the apocalypse. I believe that's the meaning. Not sure, I've seen them in a bunch of games, for example in the Binding of Isaac, where they play quite a central role as there are just so many different horseman bosses in that game, but I digress. So, with the build idea out of the way, let's get right into it. For our robe, there are many different options, however, I decided to run a Fury robe setup. You can run pretty much anything, in my opinion, anything damage related works for this build very well, so if you'd prefer something like a rule robe, which is a little more defensive, but it is quite versatile, or something like a venture robe, a lot more offensive, a lot less versatile, in my opinion, but incredibly aggressive and can scale very well, can run rampant very, very quickly, or even something a lot more inconsistent, but a bit more flashy, like an all robe or a shift robe. That is totally up to you. However, I was gonna run something that I do well, which is a signature charge related build. Not for the reason you might think. I don't want to cast my signature a lot. I don't care about that. I only care about generating signature charge for this build. The Fury robe increases your signature charge gain by 20%, which is a lot. That's all we care about with this robe. Again, I can't stress that enough. And it also increases our signature charge damage by 25%, which is a huge chunk. When you upgrade this robe, which we absolutely want to do, we want as much signature charge as humanly possible, it becomes a menace to deal with, especially in builds that deal very, very high damage on the signature in the first place, but even on signatures that are simply not incredibly overpowering, that are still decent, this becomes a menace. It's a huge damage increase, and it's incredibly overtuned in my opinion, but that makes it very fun, and it should absolutely remain in the game as is. Honestly, it's just quite fun. It's my favorite robe in the game, easily, for most builds anyway, simply because it generates so much extra signatures, and that's, quite frankly, very fun to me. That's my playstyle. I love generating signatures. Though, arguably the Temper Robe also sort of does that by giving you plenty of cooldown reduction. But again, I am sidetracking. We are going to be combining this with our very elusive, very interesting starting relic, which is a defensive relic that I haven't seen in a real put-together run forever. I never get to see this, so I never get to pick it, naturally. I used to pick it all the time, whereas nowadays, I'm just not all that fortunate anymore, apparently. It is a defensive item, and a very expensive and strong defensive item at that. It's, of course, the cushioned flip-flops. Damage received is expended from your signature meter while you have sufficient charge to shield the attack. Wow, there are many caveats to this. So, in case you didn't understand, as long as our signature bar has at least a little bit of charge, a little bit of blue in it, that blue is entirely consumed when you take damage. So let's say you have 75 signature points in your signature bar and you take 100 damage. Then all the 75 points are eradicated and you take the difference of 25 damage. Say you have 100 points in there and you take 100 damage, you take 0 damage. It's all just your signature charge taking the damage for you. And that has a bunch of advantages. One of which, a very simple one, being that you never have to heal using this properly. Which is, of course, impossible. You will take damage eventually without your signature charge being adequately charged. However, you will have to heal significantly, yes. Sorry, what? Significantly less, pardon, using this with a signature charge setup, as we are doing here with the Fury Robe. We generate a lot more signature charge, meaning that we take a lot more damage. Theoretically, anyway, but practically, this works quite well as well. Also, this counts as shielded damage taken, or shielded health, or whatever the term might be in this game, I'm not sure about that, meaning that you are not stun-locked into oblivion. Unlike when a boss attack directly hits your health bar, and you are stun-locked, you can't move for a short period of time after being hit, and you are stun-locked, you are locked into the attack, you just take all the damage. When it's a fast attack like a stage 3 Freya signature, which freezes you on the first hit, and then follows that up with a bunch of extra freezes and a shitload of extra damage, and say you already got a double trouble in your inventory, you might as well consider yourself dead, or very, very lucky to be alive, at the very least, after the attack. So, yeah, it's shielded health. It has the property, the innate property of tanking that CC, taking it away from the enemy. When I only take so much damage, and the shield isn't penetrated, so to speak, so my health bar isn't scratched, I am not stun-locked at all. I'm not affected by this. And my ability, I believe, also doesn't get cancelled, unlike a regular attack, where a stun-lock clearly cancels an ability that you are up to cast, that you are in the process of casting, or that is currently being charged, for example. So very, very good, and it combines very well with our rope, with the build generally, because this build generates a lot of signature charge by itself as well, which is amplified by the Fury Rope, and then abused by our starting relic, the flip-flops, but also it combines very well with our signature. We'll get to that in a second here. Now, just for now, know that our signature has a short period of time where we will be left vulnerable and unable to do anything. There's really no counterplay, so I decided I want to have more iframes to this build in order to use that signature. And there is nothing really in this game that gives you more iframes. It's always conditional. You always have to take damage. For example, using a Stygian Turtle Shell, you'd have to take a lot of damage to proc a Stygian Turtle Shell, which I don't consider worth it. You'd have to take a bunch of damage to proc something like a Kasim's Airy Cloak and then evade all attacks afterwards, which I also don't consider worth it. It also has a rather long cooldown to this relic, so I was really looking for something to give him more iframes in order to reduce that very obvious, very consistent damage intake that you always have to reckon with when using this set of abilities. I really wanted to use this set of abilities, so I was looking for something that grants iframes. And the closest thing to an item that will grant you extra iframes, to an item that will grant you invulnerability for a short period of time at pretty much no cost, or next to no cost, I found were the caution flip-flops, as I am not stun-locked after using my ability. If my signature charge is high enough, I will barely take any damage, or probably won't take damage at all, and then also not be stun-locked. And that's what I am going to be trying to do with this build. Now let's get into the Arcana though. Let's start with the supportive Arcana. Speaking of our basic, and our dash. So we will move in order here. Our basic is going to be Chaos Reaper. A Chaos Arcana, meaning that it can't be enhanced nor unenhanced. So that's 100 gold we gotta spend less in order to have a very strong Arcana. This Arcana is incredible. It does so many things. It has great coverage, great crowd control possibilities, absolutely fantastic range and width. It can be easily enhanced, goes with a ham sandwich, quite frankly. It's a basic, so you can easily enhance the damage with stuff like candies, for example, or with gloves, for example, or many other things, really. And this can definitely be a second or third strategy to your build, a backup, if you will, maybe even a second backup. It's quite strong. Absolutely goes with any and everything you pick up, and that's why we are picking it. It independently from the build and from our items will work very nicely and get the job done consistently and very efficiently at that. Now this is a scythe swing. It's a charged based melee arcana, meaning that typically these have a certain duration to them in order to dish out all of their damage, unlike abilities that you just tap multiple times and they cast as fast as you tap them essentially. This has to be charged, so it swings once with the scythe in a cleave and then a bunch of times when charged, which does very high damage, and I believe, since it's a Chaos Arcana, also destroys projectiles. I don't know that off the top of my head. I believe it does though, don't take my word on that. It also applies the sort of chaos debuff equivalent to something like a burn, for example, or a shock, which is a chaos ball on your enemy, dealing 5 damage a tick, if I recall correctly, dealing very high extra damage on all the enemies hit. So very nice. It's a charged base ability, meaning that it can be retargeted. So you cast it, and then before it gets fully charged, before the charge goes off, you just quickly retarget it into a different direction, and it will cast the ability in that direction. But also by itself, it pretty much has a, like 270-degree radius around your character. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. You will hit pretty much everything in your range as long as you target it, as long as you cast it against a wall, like so, for example. Or even in a circumstance like this, for example. I'm casting it right here, or I'm casting it right here, and I should still be able to connect with all of the enemies in my immediate range here. Let's take a look at it. It's also piercing, by the way. Forgot that part, but I feel like that's self-explanatory to a melee arcana, to a charge-based arcana. It looks like so. Also looks fantastic, also makes it feel great, also has decent movement while using it. But just look at that damage, and that range, and that viciousness, it's great. You can also tap this decently, efficiently well. Unlike all the other charge-based abilities in the game, this has a very strong tapping ability, which also generates a boatload of signature charge. So you might be able to tell. Just, let's wait for the bar to deplete, and then take a look at this. Just look at that. Oh my god, see those jumps in that? Holy crap, that is a lot of signature charge gain from just one Arcana. And it's so versatile, we love it. It can also be used, for example, very well in order to cover short distances, or push people into cliffs, for example, to stun lock abilities by applying the debuff, and so on and so forth. It has just a myriad, a plethora, if you will, of use cases. And it's completely independent from the rest of the build, which we love to see. For our dash, we will be using the Chaotic Rift. This is a very interesting pick, if I do say so myself. It is a very strong dash, probably the strongest in the game. To most people, I'd say that's obvious, it's subjective. It is incredibly fast. It basically is cast at instant speed without a cooldown. It's a teleport, so it ignores projectiles. If you just teleport through the projectiles, or over the projectiles, I suppose, you just ignore them entirely. It has no cooldown as well. Let me rephrase on that. It's a teleport with no cooldown that can also teleport you through walls, for example. It always covers a certain distance into the direction that you choose, so it does also go through walls. It ignores enemies. It doesn't deal damage, but it doesn't have to. It's just so versatile, so strong, so fast, so immediate, and it's just so good. It works with any build. It's also chaos, meaning, again, it can't be enhanced, can't be unenhanced. 100 gold less you gotta spend for a very strong Arcana. Fantastic. Also synergizes with items like Luxury Handbag, since it's chaotic, meaning that it's already enhanced. It counts as enhanced, even though it can't be unenhanced. So you get the bonus from something like a Luxury Handbag. Fantastic. Absolutely awesome. Super, super strong. Let's take a look at this quickly. Very, very nice ability. Now, I can't show off teleporting through a wall here. Just take my word on that, because there is a chest behind, or the jukebox, meaning that, yeah, the teleport is going to try to teleport me into the jukebox, which doesn't work. Also, you have to keep a certain distance when trying to teleport from things, through walls, for example, because if you don't, if you just do this, you will teleport in place, which is a mistake I make quite frequently, or teleport into corners like here. I make that quite a lot, because I don't use this ability a lot, and I'm quite a dum-dum. But just know better than me, and pay attention, and you should be having a fantastic time using this ability. It's very, very strong, and it synergizes very well with our standard, which we will get to now. This is the key piece to the build. It is the Stalwart Defenders, which I have explained in the very beginning here, very briefly. This is a very clunky ability, probably the most clunky ability in the entirety of the game, to be frank with you. This ability casts, generally, 4 chess pieces, black and white chess pieces in an alternating manner, similar to a chess board, which are deployed in a sort of D shape from your character, or a U shape, however you want to think of it, and stomp your enemies into the ground. The initial cast deals 15 damage, the stomp deals 50 damage, and the upgrade then stomps in the initial stomp location in place a second time for another 50 damage, which is fantastic. I believe it's 50. Don't take my word on that. Again, I didn't test it. I believe it is 50 again. It's very, very high damage, theoretically. Now, practically, this ability has many caveats, and it's very hard to hit consistently. Let's take a look at it, shall we? Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here already. Now, these things count as walls. They are static. It's not like a fireball that you cast and it flies and it explodes on the first enemy hit. No, these remain. These linger around for a short while after casting them. And they count as walls. So enemies have to walk around them as long as that's the shortest way towards a character. And so do you. You have to walk around them. You can't walk through them, at least in most situations. Also, as with all walls in the game, you can still attack through them, like so. As long as your attack has enough range or width, in some cases, to go through the wall and connect with the hitbox of an enemy, it will still damage the enemy and stun lock them and so on and so forth. So, that's caveat number 1. Caveat number 2, unlike walls like these right here, of which most projectiles in the game wouldn't be able to go through, something like an explosive fireball, for example, would usually explode. They would shatter or whatever on these walls. Certain projectiles, however, can go through the walls, like drills, for example. They do pierce walls for some reason. And walls also take damage for some reason. Either way, you should probably try casting a drill against a wall like this one. You will see exactly what I mean. But unlike these usual, regular properties, these Stalwart Defender chess piece walls are completely translucent, I suppose, transparent to projectiles. You can shoot any and all projectiles through these. I believe it doesn't even matter what part of this sort of D-shaped wall you shoot it through. It doesn't matter. Enemy projectiles and your projectiles alike should be able to pierce through these, completely ignoring or bypassing the wall, I should say. So you can make a build around that, essentially putting up a wall and then shooting your projectiles through, like Donald Trump sort of cosplay or something. I don't know. You might want to do that. It's very weird, and that's the second caveat. The third caveat is they are very difficult to use in corridors. Now, where the intended ability is to cast 4 knights, always in the same shape, when you cast this inside of a corridor, things get very wonky very quickly. So let's say I'm in the middle of the corridor. There's not enough room here for these knights to spawn, so only 2 will spawn in the first place, jumping in wildly unexpected ways, like so. Across as well, and then they leave a hole in the middle for enemies to just walk through and attack you. Also, very hard to hit inside of this corridor. Also, incredibly low range generally, so even harder to hit inside of this corridor against a bunch of enemies heading towards you. Very weird. Can't recommend doing that. Also, if you're trying to seal off this corridor so enemies can't get to you, and you are pretty much guaranteed to hit them, or be able to buy some spare time so you can walk away and recollect, wait for your cooldowns, or hit them in a more decent way, so you split them up and maybe they clump up then again or something. However you intend to use it, it doesn't exactly work that way because you can't really do that. Say I cast it from over here. The distance in the first place is very difficult to nah, I'm missing the word here. It's very difficult to grasp where this ability is spawning initially and where they are gonna jump, where they're gonna land, and that's really all the beginning. That's just the beginning of all the problems with this ability. It's just so hard to use and predict where it's gonna land. That was the word I was missing, by the way. So let's say I cast it in here in an attempt to seal off the corridor. Well, only 2 horses. I failed. It's a massive hole in between they can just walk through. Yes, surely they took a little bit of damage, but they can still walk through. I didn't achieve the goal. Let's go a little bit more forward here. Okay, we at least cast for the horses, but now we are just a little bit too far away. See those large holes? Sorry. Let's try to hit that spot again. It's just so difficult. Like so, maybe. No, that's still not far enough. It's just so hard to do that. I strongly recommend you don't do it, but when you actually do it like so, quite sloppy, you can see these large holes, which we intended to not leave any holes in the first place. We wanted to prevent enemies from getting to us in order to set something up. But turns out we can't do that this way. We can't at all. However we try it, it doesn't work. So casting it at the end of a corridor in an attempt to seal off the corridor, for example, doesn't work. Not the greatest of ideas. Also clumps up enemies, splits them up in weird ways that you might not want. So generally it's just much better to walk through the corridor and let enemies walk inside of the corridor and then group up there. So you could burst them down with a lot of AoE, for example. Also, this has the advantage of, if you go really far behind the corridor, you being able to somewhat easily actually seal off the corridor, achieving your goal, and setting up a proper second stomp, which is kind of hard to hit on the default ability, as enemies, when I cast this initially, will usually try to walk around these walls towards your character model to attack you, and then the second stomp might miss them because they might be out of range, or they walked slightly too far away from the horses in the process of trying to walk around them, or maybe the horses jumped across them entirely, which might happen. Or maybe they jumped across the horses, which might also happen. There are just so many things that could go wrong here that I would rather not talk about. So instead, try to walk through a corridor to the beginning of a corridor, get enemies to get stuck in the corridor like so, and then burst them down. But also, another caveat here, don't get too close to the walls, because the horses not only get destroyed when spawning inside of a wall, no, they also get shifted around by the walls, like so. They get blocked. Sorry, that was a bad example. Trying to find the spot here. Trying to find the sweet spot, maybe like here. Yeah, and then they split up in very weird and unpredictable ways, sometimes even stacking in front or on top of each other. It's just so weird using this ability around corridors, so try to avoid that to the best of your ability. It's fairly easily to hit from way over here anyway, so just a much better strategy in my book anyway. I'm going to be trying to pay attention to that, though I have very little experience playing with this. As I stated previously, I cannot stand this ability in most builds, though I really want to like it. I at least like the idea of it. I don't like the execution, but we'll see if we can make it work using this build. Also, third caveat probably, I have completely lost track of counting the caveats, there's just too many. You can jump through these walls with something like a dash, which is a teleport, which teleports through walls, so it completely bypasses the wall property of this ability for you, for the player model. Which is great, you can just teleport in between however long you want, in an attempt to make enemies walk loops around this, for example. It doesn't really have a great use case, but it's very goofy, rather very goofy and fun to look at, and just Looney Tunes like, I'd almost say. You just try to make enemies walk into certain ways or something. I don't know. It's goofy, but it at least works out. So there's that. There you go. Also, you can jump across this. Whether you are a player or an enemy, you can jump above this thing, and you will completely bypass the horse's abilities to shut you down that way as well, which we will see in a second here with our signature, which happens to be a jump. Seismic Entry. Decent signature ability, deals decent damage. It's a movement-based ability as it is a jump, which means you can easily enhance its damage using movement-based items like movement-based cooldown reduction, movement-based damage, and so on and so forth. Just a lot of extra conditional items do apply to this. It's very easily enhanceable for that reason. It's decent as a base version, deals decent damage. It's decent as a signature, deals decent damage. What can you say about it? It's quite average. It's also a jump, that means it's slightly above average in that regard, because it grants you offensive and defensive capabilities, as jumps grant you iframes when used, meaning that you can't be hit. You are completely invulnerable while using the ability. You can jump over attacks, or even just straight up through attacks, or inside of attacks, and not take any damage, as long as you are in the air. Now, the caveat of this ability, the massive downside, is that it has a rather long duration after using it, so when you land back on the ground where you are vulnerable, because it doesn't allow for you to cast abilities shortly after. You are stuck there, just for a brief moment, but that moment is usually enough. If you are jumping inside of an attack, through an attack, whichever it might be, if an attack comes up your way, for example, shortly after using this, which you didn't predict, or you did predict, but the prediction was wrong, inaccurate, you will take a bunch of damage. You will get stun locked, and you might just die. And we are trying to mitigate that downtime, that inability to do anything about being stun locked using the cushion flip-flops. Also, they synergize naturally well. This kind of triangle construct of the flip-flops, the Seismic Entry, and the Fury Robe, as these abilities naturally work together. For obvious reasons, right? I said it's a decent signature, so it works by itself, even if not used with the intention of using the flip-flops in mind to play more aggressively, for example. But, regardless, let's show off first what this jump looks like. It's a short leap, dealing a medium amount of damage, I'd say, for your average signature, for your average jump. It's okay, nothing wild. Leaves behind this rather large AoE ranger character, which sort of stun locks enemies, allowing for another synergy. So, we can use this, like so, in place. But we can also move while using this ability. And we can move across the Stalwart Defenders. Also, we can use the AoE of this ability to try to keep enemies inside of the range of these Stalwart Defenders, as this doesn't knock them back too far, or at all, I believe, in order for the second stomp of the Stalwart Defenders to connect. We can also simply use it as mobility, so as to jump across and deal decent damage. Now, the signature, as you can see right there, is cast thrice. It's just 3 times the regular ability, leaving behind a bunch of areas that stun lock enemies, deal okay damage, allowing for a lot of goofy plays, like jumping back and forth through these Stalwart Defenders, or even jumping inside, as this is a jump, and you can actually land inside of the ability. Pardon, I feel like my throat is getting very dry here. Try not to cough, it's kind of difficult. So you can jump in between these things, whereas now I can't walk through. The second I jump inside of it, which is kind of hard to do, like so, I can. I am stuck inside, but I can still walk through this wall. However, again, another caveat, there's just so many things to this, so many weird things. When I do this, I can't jump, I can't walk up or down. They still count as a wall in those directions, but I can walk right or left. I can just do this and walk through. And then I can't make my way back because I'm not stuck in there anymore. I do count as being freed, so it counts as a wall to me again. Same for enemies, which is a thing that happens once every century or so, that an enemy will actually get stuck inside of 2 of these. It's nigh impossible, but it might happen. They also sometimes jump above enemies, trapping them inside of the D, which is absolutely not what you want. You would want them to be zoned out like so, and not be on your side of the wall, right? So this ability is an absolute mess to use. It's buggy as hell, and I absolutely love it. It deals great damage. It's fun to use. I think we might potentially ruin a run using this, or overusing it, but we shall see. So yeah, I think with that out of the way, we have talked about all these synergies and anti-synergies here, mainly with our hard piece, our Stalwart Defenders. And with that out of the way, I'd say let's get right into the run, shall we? But before that, of course, we have to talk about the build specifics with the intended build playstyle, which I intend to be not super aggressively. You could focus on going for a signature charge build, because your signature is decent enough to do so. You have a lot of signature charge generation right from the get-go. You could also opt to go for basic Arcana build, as your basic Arcana is just overwhelmingly strong and works in any given situation very well all the time, scales very well with certain items. But we're not going to go for any of those plans, as we really purely want to focus on our primary game plan here, which is trying to make Stalwart Defenders work as a decent damage / support ability, or maybe just a gimmick to this build. Whether we actually make use of that gimmick frequently is a different story. I don't think I will be jumping around it multiple times, because there's just not really a purpose to that. It's just a fun thing to do that you can do, that you probably shouldn't do. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't deal damage, just kill your enemies faster. It doesn't help you stay alive. So it's a gimmick. It's a build with a gimmick that we're going to try to make work, whether we actually make use of these in-depth mechanics here or not. And then when that actually should turn out to not work out, so we don't get the items we want, we don't get damage increases, for example, or cooldown reduction to be able to cast this ability more often, or have it have more impact on the gameplay, then we might resort to our secondary or tertiary game plans, which might be basic attacking or a signature build, respectively. So I intend, long story short, TLDR, to play this build rather defensively, not incredibly aggressively, even though we could. We're only going to be super aggressive when we can frequently generate a lot of signature. Enough signature to be able to use all of our abilities freely without really having any downside, as the shielded health will allow for us to not take any damage and to not be interrupted in what we are doing, and to kill our enemies just a lot faster and more aggressively, quite frankly. In terms of potential problems, I do view just the sheer nature of Stalwart Defenders as problematic. I do think it's terrible into bosses. It's very hard, it has a very tiny range. It doesn't count as neither melee nor ranged, by the way, in case you didn't know. I didn't go over that. So it can't be easily enhanced with damagey items or cooldown reduction related items. It's just so hard to make this work. It usually hinders your ability to kill enemies fast and just completely slows things down or makes them come to a halt entirely. So I view that as the only real deal here. Anything beyond that seems like a very minor problem to me, and definitely isn't noteworthy or even worthy of being mentioned here. And then finally, for my favorite section, recommended items and Arcana. In terms of Arcana, any jumps are fantastic. You love them. You love a lot more versatility from ranged abilities, which we are definitely lacking here in our base build, from something like a Bolt Claymore or an Explosive Fireball. So those very strong, large AoE, very high damage, powerful ranged abilities. So that we just have a lot more freedom in terms of how we play. And that's technically another backup game plan, as you can just pick one of those, any one of those, and then get something like a Double Trouble and a Singing Bowl, for example, and just burst everything down in one hit. But I digress. So there are plenty of good abilities that go with this. Any great ability that I always mention, again, Explosive Fireball, an Airborne Slam, a Permafrost Bulwark, and so on and so forth are fantastic for this build, and I strongly recommend those. Also something like an Evading Zephyr might come in handy at times, so we can just use our backup plans slightly more efficiently. Something like a Fueled Berserk might come in handy at times, again, for that same reason. You just want to have those very, very powerful abilities that you probably already know of, and pretty much want to have in any run anyway. And beyond those, I can't really think of any strong abilities. There are not really any particularly strong combinations that I can think of here, except many abilities that are a little more clunky, that require enemies to be a little more grouped up, that just maybe take a while to get going, because the enemies take a while to walk around these defenders as well, meaning that, yeah, we can actually sort of use those also very clunky abilities, which take a while to get going. I am thinking of a particular lightning ability here, which is this kind of, is it a pentagram? I think it's like a pentagram imitation, a bunch of poles in an area, a circle of poles, in between of which there is just a little bit of lightning striking two poles at a given time, alternating randomly between those poles. Like, I don't know what it's called. I've no clue. I always thought that ability was absolute dog water, and we might be able to make that work a little bit better with this build, but I wouldn't look for those abilities specifically and then actually spend any money on buying them. Just look for something good. Something very, very good and solid that it works independently from the rest of the build, or might work well with the build if you somehow came across any synergies I wasn't aware of so far. So there's that in terms of Arcana. In terms of items, which is the much more interesting section, we have pretty much everything. Everything works. Stones, for example, anything melee related, jump related, movement related, works for your backup plan, going for your signature. Candies and anything basic related, like gloves, the cestus, for example, they work decently well with your other backup plan going for the basic. And everything else works for the entirety of the build, whether it be cooldown reduction, allowing for you to just use your jump more often, dodging more abilities, being more aggressive, also allowing for your defenders to be used more often, more aggressively, more so like an explosive fireball than a very clunky melee AoE ability. Also, damage increases obviously are fantastic. Doubling your damage is also fantastic. Tripling, quadrupling it, and so on and so forth. Those are great. You absolutely love that. Crit chance works decently well with the Stalwart Defenders, as they already hit quite hard from the get-go. And everything beyond that, like defense, is considerable. I don't know. It depends on the situation. Like, I wouldn't play this build defensively. You could. You would be a lunatic to do so. Just purely defensively play this build, but it could work. You already got flip-flops. Speaking of which, you obviously, clearly, the number one thing you want is a lot more signature charge generation. Something like an Infinity Marble is actually really, really helpful because it keeps your charge signature charged. It doesn't decay once charged, meaning that it's just a second full health bar. Fantastic. You love that. You love the Surefire Rocket. You love the Family Seal, and so on and so forth. Everything that gives you more signature is the GOAT to this build. You want that absolutely 100% of the time, regardless of your game plan. It's always helpful to be taking less damage and be stunned less and be able to just do more stuff, be more aggressive, be more defensive, be more efficient in what you do. So that should be a game plan. Basically, pick whatever you come across, pick whatever you want. If you only come across candies and stones, might as well go for that backup game plan, because what else are you going to be doing at that point? Okay, with all that out of the way, I'd say, let's not hesitate. Let's get right into the run. Grabbing our money. We don't have to evade anyone in particular here, as we share two different elements. We have 2 Earth elements and 2 Chaos, which are not affected by strengths or weaknesses, so we don't really have to worry about any particular dungeons or bosses here. Also, this build isn't particularly strong or weak against certain dungeons, I feel. Even though, arguably, this is a true melee build technically, so something like the Water Dungeon is very dangerous to work with. Okay. Oh my god. Yeah, I just got reminded of one property that I completely forgot about. These Stalwart Defenders actually count as an entity. So they are targeted by enemies as long as they are closer to that enemy than your character. That's somewhat useful. So you can use that as a bait, sort of a decoy. Sometimes, but trust me, this doesn't happen a lot. Like, it might seem very helpful on the surface, but it truly isn't. Okay. Man, my throat does not feel great today. Okay, just ignoring me. That's rude. Keep in mind of the caveats of this ability to not cast it at the end of a corridor. That's why I stepped forth a little bit here. You don't want to cast it from over here, for example, because then it's just gonna be 3 of them in this case, and it's most likely going to miss. I feel like usually the horses strike either as 4 or as 2. But I have seen 3, and I believe I've seen 1 as well over the course of me playing this build over and over again. Now, I haven't played this particularly build over and over again. I have simply tried to make this Arcana work many, many times over the years. I really want to like it. Okay. Not a mimic, seemingly. Rock and Roll is a decent ranged ability. I do like that a lot. It's definitely going to be helpful with the cleanup of enemies and baiting them. From outside of rooms, that is. Okay, nothing here. That's fine. Stalwart Defenders upgrade right away. We love to see it, but gotta... Oh no, we have already found the Cursed Merchant. Well, we can't trade our unenhanced Stalwart Defenders here. It might be a viable strategy, since we only have one ability that needs to be upgraded, or that we want to be upgraded, to wait this upgrade out. Wait for an opportunity where Iris actually sells the upgrade, but also there is a Cursed Merchant on the floor, a red merchant, who will trade for an unenhanced Arcana. But since we already got a Rock and Roll that is unenhanced and it's not super crucial to the build or anything, we might as well ignore that circumstance entirely and instead actually buy the upgrade here right away. Rock and Roll definitely combines decently well enough with our what's it called again? With our Chaos Ball debuff, because then we can stunlock enemies much more easily and much more often. I do like that. It's just not super helpful in the late game. It's okay into Sura, it's nothing wild. What do we do? I do like Jade's Chakra Locket. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna get that right away. I do also like the Midas Hamlet, but there is no guarantee that that will ever come in handy this early on into the game. And I haven't exactly developed a game plan yet to win this run, so I prefer not to pick that up right away. The Stalwart Defenders, since they count as an entity, which again makes me kind of salty that I forgot about, but you can't exactly test that in the target army area, so naturally, yeah, it's okay to forget about that. They also block projectiles, as they count as an entity, as an enemy towards your enemies. That's not something super wild or interesting or useful, but it can come in handy given a certain situation. Nothing here, as you would expect. Let's move on to Kremire and get the hell out of here. Now this dash covers a large distance, and it is so fast that I think it is favorable over actually manually walking. And by favorable, of course, I mean faster. Plain and simple, right? Let me take a sip here while running around. My throat always gets so dry. At least during recent times, that's been the case. Hit them once before casting my signature as to stun lock him, because if I don't, he's gonna get back up on his feet and attack me much faster. So I do want to stun lock him and then follow that up with the signature. I do want to proc him, if you will, proc the stun lock, which has a certain set duration, so he doesn't just try attacking while I'm signaturing. He might dash away from the signature, and in turn I would lose a bunch of damage. I already found one minus item, which pretty much will just generate boatloads of money over the course of this run. So, yeah. It's definitely great. It stacks up very well with the Midas helmet, not only for the reason that it physically stacks, but also because it generates a lot of money, so a lot more defense over the course of this run, and likely an end game here with a lot of armor at my disposal. I do like that. Also gotta bounce the helmet, but I can't, so let's pick them up individually to do that. Yeah, that's nice. Love this helmet, it looks great. It's a gladiator's helmet. It's very nice. Oh shit. Try and work around the projectile destruction. Okay, jumping in place can be very helpful sometimes. They don't do that. Jump, jump, jump. High frames everywhere, let's go. I just wasted a little bit of healing, but really, I don't care at this point. Now I could trade here for 2 extra Arcana, potentially enhanced Arcana. I might do that. I think I'll do it now though. It's pretty much always better to just keep your unenhanced Arcana to trade them in Doctor Songs, but I might find another unenhanced Arcana. Potentially, right? Maybe. Hopefully. Let's get that, as it's gonna help against Freya, and then I'd like a melee ability, or somewhat melee ability. We are going to be having to fight Wind and Lightning, whose projectiles, generally speaking, cannot be destroyed, so Firewall isn't as helpful as it would usually be. This would be insane into someone like a Freya or a Zeal, but this is not a late Zeal, this is an early Zeal. So, projectile destruction, not super useful, still very good into Sura. This Firewall destroys all projectiles that touch it. It doesn't deal damage in the process, but as a supportive Arcana, this thing is nutty. And for that reason, I believe I am instead going to be running the Breaking Twister, which is a rather short range, I would consider it melee ability, which deals a decent chunk of damage. Hello. Come on, you guys. Oh, I missed that. Let's just do that. Hehehe, projectile destruction. Go fuck yourself, guys. Okay, let's do this, since I got a charge signature right now. Of course, it's the thief, so I can't really reap any benefits from this. Come on. Okay. kind of want to see whether he's going to try to target these. But I guess I just gotta kill him. Yeah. I left him on too low of a HP count. Kind of a bummer, but ultimately not that huge of a deal. Now, if you are quite a new player to this game, I just made a misplay. Pretty obvious misplay. I do receive healing from picking up gems, and you always get a bunch of gems and potentially a bunch of healing and items from popping a chest. So generally, it is advisable to not pop that chest if you generally take a lot of damage over the course of your floor clearing, over the course of your dungeon clearing, so you get healed a bunch. But I really don't care much. Also, the locket in the first place isn't super powerful because, in case you haven't noticed, I'm not starting out on 999, or rather 998 gems here. Instead, I am only at about half, 596 currently, so I don't get as large of an armor boost off of this, as I played a lot of boss rush recently and spent just a shitload of gems there. So not super strong. I'm just picking this for the healing mainly, not for the armor, even though the armor would have come in handy too. It's just not enough to justify a purchase. Word of Vigor, on the other hand, very strong purchase. Allows for me to purchase as much as I desire, and in combination with the Shackle Locket, that's just so much extra value from being able to buy items essentially for free. Can we make Crimea appear twice? I am not sure. Token of Commerce is always a worthwhile purchase. You get slightly more gold out of this than it is worth. So you buy it for 125, or rarely on sale for 100, and you get, I believe, 150 gold from Crimea. It's like not super impactful, but if you already have a bunch of other garbage that you want to get rid of, it's a good purchase. I don't think I want to do that. I don't really want to see Crimea again. I do kind of want to see Doctor Songs, but I still need an unenhanced ability, so I'm going to opt... No, failed that jump. I'm going to opt to try and buy an unenhanced ability. Maybe on this floor, probably on the next. Just so I can trade a Doctor Songs, potentially for a large damage increase. Now, the Stalwart Defenders are also affected by gravity, so if I cast them against this cliff, right here, for example, they all fall inside, even before spawning, and then die immediately. Or more realistically, while spawning, but you can't see that, because they spawn inside of the cliff already having fallen down all of it. Use that CC to kill all of them with the spear. Abuse my knowledge of where the enemies are going to spawn. The Stalwart Defenders. Hit both of them with the absolute girth of that wind ability. There are just so many intricate plays in here for you to discover and explore and observe. I was going to say observate. Is observate still a word? A word. Talking is hard today. I don't know what it is. I'm just brain dead again, apparently. But talking is hard, let's be fair. It's the whole point I'm doing this, because recording a video without editing it is quite a pain in the ass. I do like that. For some reason, I do like torturing myself. Oh, they didn't cover enough distance. Kind of a bummer, but that's okay. Alright, moving on. No, we are still actually missing one, which is to the right here, which is going to be Iris. Look at that gold generation, man. Holy shit. We have so much armor already with all the gems and all the gold. Okay. Oh no, we have just been to Iris. I am officially brain dead today, huh? That's okay. Some days are just like that. So, I'm deciding to not buy anything here except an unenhanced discounted Water Flames. That's sweet. Great. Now, unfortunately, I completely fucked up the entire way of doing this floor. I should have, obviously, gotten to the shop first, buy the Word of Vigor, then spend as much money as I can possibly do, and then heal back up with the Jade's Chakra Locket over the course of the floor. I can still spend a little bit of money on something like the Mirror here, but it's a very bad purchase as it literally does nothing for me. All abilities are enhanced beside the Ward, so it does nothing for me at all, and it's destroyed when dropped, meaning I can't even sell it off. It's just so annoying. And then even buying the Token of Commerce isn't a great decision, as I've already seen Cremon, and that would just take away a potential spawn of Nox, or Song, or Pinata, even though Pinata isn't important to this run, but it's just a little of extra money. And Token of Commerce, quite frankly, does nothing currently. Besides make a potential Mimic find worse, it crosses out another floor where I could find a Dr. Song or a Nox, or the aforementioned Pinata. So it's just a terrible floor, really, for finding this kind of setup. Can't really do anything with all this money, or rather, all this health. I'm not sure whether there's a synergy between Glacial Spear and the Stalwart Defenders. I might be able to get more damage by trying to knock enemies into the Stalwart Defenders. Not sure that counts as a wall. I believe it would, as it stops them from physically walking through. I do really like the Tornado here because it does destroy a lot more projectiles than the Breaking Twister, but Breaking Twister is just a very, very high damage ability, and as we've already talked about projectile destruction in this run, we know that since we already talked about this, we know that projectile destruction to this run isn't gonna be as huge of help of an asset of a run-winning or run-supporting viable idea. Okay, knock the elite there, buy us a little bit of extra time. Again here, just stun lock them. It's great. So use the Girth here for our ability, the Twister. Do this to shut them down and get rid of evasion, and then again this to get rid of evasion, clone them up, hit them all with the spear. It's a great supportive ability here. Use this while one of them is stun locked for a safe hit. Use our portal to evade the still rather slow attacks from them, because we are just so much faster than them. Wait over here, so they group up naturally, and then we can kill them all. And just a handful of uses. Okay. Just gotta make sure to keep all of our sweet, sweet health, so we can use that as a resource to buy things. Don't you just love that? Okay, I see a lot of better items in here. For example, a Mirror Shield. It's just such a strong defensive item. And now I should buy as much as possible, as I will be receiving plenty of healing from finding random healing orbs, or gems generally by breaking obstacles, for example, or mimics and other chests. So I should spend all the money that I can, or rather, again, all the health that I can. I don't think Pandemic Pouch is super useful. I only have a freeze here and in an iffy slow with a Breaking Twister, which is not super beneficial to spread. It already is a rather large AoE, so it will naturally spread. Reinforced Bracers is decent, though I'm not working with a bunch of projectiles here, I'm just working with these two projectiles. So, not the greatest purchase. Again, Token of Commerce is again reoccurring here, I do like that, but it's a bit of an insult for sure. Don't rely on the Mirror Shield, it has a large girth and it will be consumed by a fruit fly hitting it, essentially. It's super annoying. Super annoying how large this thing is. Gets hit all the time when you don't want to. Even while jumping through things, this thing doesn't get deactivated, it doesn't get iframes. So when you are jumping to evade an attack, it will still consume the Mirror Shield, leaving you open to be wounded afterwards. Otherwise, it would have been a decent pick as well to mitigate damage after using a Seismic Entry, for example. But since it works as it does, no, not so much. Girth is the place. Okay, let's do this. I did tank a little bit of damage there, but luckily we have the cushion flip-flop, so we don't really cannot be bothered. You peasants. Violent barbarians. See this? Just double stomp to distract, and then stun lock, and dead they are. I did take a little bit of damage from walking into the tornado though, but again, flip-flops. Flip-flops are also very helpful with maintaining the Midas item here, because as long as we kill enemies without taking damage, whereby taking damage would reset the counter on this item, I believe every 5th enemy kill drops a bunch of extra money, and, more importantly, nice looking confetti. We love that. We can't spend our Wallet of Vigor here because generally merchants or merchant services do not accept trading health. So, yeah, bit unfortunate. Why are we seeing... What the hell is this? Why is that happening? 2 Water Flames. I already have the unenhanced version, first of all. This is on sale again. And then here is the enhanced version for the same price as well. Because, of course, we already have this ability, so it only costs 100 to upgrade it. That is ridiculous. What's going on lately? By the way, in the making of this video, on one of the first attempts of recording, I locked myself completely out of using the chest in the lobby. Even when resetting, I had to physically restart the game for the chest to be clickable again. I couldn't open the chest. It would show click X, and even the keyboard wouldn't work. So, what is going on lately? Just, the game is breaking left, right, and center. The more I'm recording, the more bugs I find. And it's quite entertaining for the most part. As you might know, if you frequently watch my boss rush runs, I come across a ton of bugs in those runs. At least occasionally. Things getting locked, anything related to the Stalwart Defenders, for example, I know simply because I have played a bunch, and I found so many things that are off about this Arcana. Try to not get the Mirror Shield consumed. And then we get it consumed there and tank the excess damage using our flip-flops. Jump across this because it's more reliable. Use this to destroy projectiles because... no reason, honestly. Just because we can. Stop twice. Fine by me. And then jump around a bunch more. So much money! So much healing. Moving on. Very interesting for sure. I also recently, I believe it was in Boss Rush, I got a purchase of 4 fire items, 4 related fire items. The Crow Foot, I believe, so that grants you a slight, well, like 6% or roughly 7% chance to burn on all your attacks. The one that makes, the burning one that makes burn attacks, or the burn status effect be more ferocious, or vicious. It's probably the original wording on the item. The exploding thing that I don't know what it's called. I always forget. It's the item that makes enemies that I kill explode, dealing a small amount of AoE damage around them. Or rather, a large amount of damage in a small AoE around them. And a 4th item, I believe it was if it's Matchstick, which increases all fire damage dealt. Crazy. Absolutely crazy shop. I've also recently found plenty of Iris shops with everything dedicated to one element. Most predominantly water element, in my case. But also found fire quite frequently. Just an all-fire casual Iris. How often does that happen? How often does that happen to you, on average? It happens a lot to me. It has, lately. Probably because I'm just recording a lot. Okay, well, don't want to do that. What? He still didn't reset? What was going on there? Okay, send off the tornado first. As it is quite slow, so it gives me slightly more time to cast other abilities. Love that. That is fantastic. Absolutely taking that, 100%. trading it for the ward, so I can trade the ward at a Dr. Songs if I ever come across that. Hopefully I will. I still have 2 floors here on which that might happen. And I could still find a token, which is as good as getting lucky. Even though a little costly, but don't really care much about that. Now, Searing Inferno is a decent melee ability, deals very good damage. It's off the fire element, it's going to be strong into the wind dungeon that we are currently in, and against the wind boss, which I fucking despise, so that's great. Also destroys projectiles, has a great coverage, burns enemies. It's great overall, very fun to use. I love using Chaotic Rift, it's quite helpful, because it's just so fast. It's instantaneous, which also helps mitigate the downtime when using Seismic Entry. Okay, just bait out the attacks. Speed a bunch of them. Horse a bunch of them. Searing Crown a bunch of them. Speed them again. I still have a Mirror Shield active, so I can still tank one attack easily. And finish them off. Of course, you can also jump in there as well. It's up to your playstyle and up to your mood in the current situation. Okay, let's buy a bunch of stuff. Bit of armor for sure. Bit of extra gem find. That's a lot of extra health. It's nothing that would hurt us. It's not super helpful either. Later, simply just because we can. We have all the money in the world. I really don't want the stopwatch down there. While good in boss rush, it is terrible in these regular ones. I do like spending a lot of time on my floor. I don't like straight up rushing to the boss and then onto the next area, so naturally stopwatch is just opposite of my playstyle. Oh, come on, horses. Move it on. A backpack. Completely useless. But it's a lot of extra health, what can you do? Well, it's not completely useless. In our case, it's actually a lot of extra health. 90 HP. I believe that's the most I've ever gotten from an item like this one. Don't know what these actually call. There's a series of these, right? Like the, what's it, the coffee cup something? I don't know what they're called. They're just worthless items in my opinion, but probably somewhat reasonable when you're doing a low HP run, low max HP run with something like a Venture Robe or Fall Robe. No, I'm not sure those actually work with a Fall Robe. I would imagine they don't. They would still work decently well with a Heart Render's Amulet, for example. Okay. Kind of have to use him this way right now, which is a little annoying. And jump in here and cast a signature because we are completely invulnerable while doing so. It's just beneficial. Exploiting jumps is absolutely fantastic in this game. It's always fun. What am I supposed to tell you, that using overpowered abilities isn't fun? Of course it is. Doesn't get stale to me, as I like using them hyper aggressively. Of course, you can try to use them very defensively in a pussy sort of way, which is like super overpowered and annoying and can't really be countered. But I don't like doing that. I like risking my ass while using something overpowered, because just being overpowered is boring. It gets stale super fast, super super quickly. I couldn't really decide on which one to choose there. I do usually have issues committing to a choice of words, because there are just so many nice words to describe a certain thing. But again, that could just be autism. It's likely. And pull. There we go. Also got the Firecle, which would have procced that one item that actually cares about how you kill things. Ugh, can't have that. I pretty much always ignore that item, even when I purposefully buy it to then proc it because I need money to run. I usually end up completely forgetting about it. Okay, just toss the spear. Just charge the axe to destroy any projectiles coming my way. Oh, I love this room. It's just so tedious. Double summoners, everybody. Don't you just love them? Also, it's super hard to cast our horses in here. Flip-flops action. And of course, it's a mimic as well. Come here. Come on, be a good boy. So much healing. A green key would be very helpful, then I can spend all the money. Oh, there we go. And I wouldn't waste so much health, so much healing. Okay. Wait, what? Oh, this does count as defensive. I wasn't aware of that. Cabby's raw chocolate. Oh, here it is. The bounty hunter seal. Yeah, let's ignore that. Infinity marble. I definitely want that. We can get rid of the offensive items here. Just stack more defense for more max HP. Not that I need any, but I mean, I'll take it. The Idealist Vest would have been fantastic with a low HP run, but we're not doing that here. Gem Locator counts as utility, so that's just a lot of extra healing. We don't really care much about it anyway. It just works decently well with the wallet. So we probably want to trade it for a lot of damage. Do this though, because I will end up finding plenty of extra gems, which will in turn raise my armor slightly with the Chakra's Locket. And the wallet actually does nothing outside of the shark, unlike the Gem Locator, which works exclusively out of the shark, if you want to think it of that. Could probably do some extra optimizations here. Re-equipping the chocolate for the remainder of the floor, but I really can't be bothered. That's not super powerful. Brilliant Balloon. Brilliant. I butchered that name just now. Is decently helpful, I'd say, as we don't care super much about taking damage. We can't exactly take a lot of damage. So whenever we get hit, not whenever we take damage, I believe, it procs, dealing just a good amount of extra damage. Healthy extra damage. You love to see it. Sure, let's do it. Make them collapse on the bus because he basically counts as a wall. Dodge the shuriken. Just a bunch of fast moves. Holy crap, that was a lot of damage thanks to the fiery paintbrush. A lot of extra healing, which we really didn't need. I think we're just gonna try and look for a Nox, preferably. Maybe even a Dr. Song. And then piss off. Hey, of course, Dr. Song. Hello. Now, generally, I would expect from a run to always present to me at least one of each of all the cursed NPCs. Sometimes you don't get to see all of them. Sometimes somehow the same ends up showing up more than twice, like a Nox, for example, which you are usually happy about. Nox is great. You love seeing Nox. But sometimes you just need that Dr. Song, for example, or the Cremire. Cremire would be helpful. I am carrying a lot of garbage around with me. Let's take a look. Let's dispose of a offensive item quickly. And then this does count as utility, and it's very, very bad utility. Having 2 healing parts is very useless, in my opinion. So, do we move on completely or look for Iris? Maybe we should look for Iris. We have one more stage to go here. What would we even find, potentially? Well, there's really only Nox that I'm interested in. And maybe Pinata, just for slightly more gold. Okay, let's do this. Stomp them to death. Fiery Paintbrush is amazing. It allows for us to have huge damage spikes, especially in this lightning dungeon where we are quite strong with the Seismic Entry. I believe Helm of Mars caps out at 500 gold, so if we subvert 500 gold, it's not gonna be at its maximum armor boost. It's currently at 20%, that is the maximum. I believe we should probably just move on. Though I would like to keep the wallet, maybe for the final shop, so I could just invest into a bunch of stuff. Maybe a supply crate, that'd be amazing. I like most of my items here, with the exception of backpack, which is awfully useless, but still has a certain use to it. Having more health means I can trait more max health. Blades means I just generate a lot more health. I don't know. I don't really feel like getting rid of any of these items except the prismatic vambrace, as I am now realizing only is stacked for 1%, so I have barely been hit by elemental attacks. That makes it a lot worse, and the decision therefore a lot easier. I'm definitely gonna keep the wallet here. I could invest into buying some stuff in here, for example the bounty hunters. That's just a lot of extra gold, but I don't really care. I'm gonna be honest, I really don't care. I also don't care about any potential chests on the fly. I got everything I need. I'm full on items. I got a fiery paintbrush as my main damage source. Yes, it's not super reliable, but when it actually does proc, my god, it hits hard. And I don't need it to proc reliably. I have a lot of health to spare. Cast the Searing Crown, so they have no way of getting to me. Cast this, again, no way of getting to me. They do not count as projectiles, so they're not picked up by the Mirror Shield casted about now. As they then have no way... Oh, I thought I had killed all of them. Apparently not. No way of getting to me. Oh, damn, he was fast. He cancelled my Searing Crown. I was gonna cast the Searing Crown now to keep the Elemental Knight stun locked and to destroy any potential arrows coming my way, as to not be disturbed while killing the elemental enemy. Same here. Searing Crown is just great for projectile destruction. Gonna use the initial damage there from our knights in order to interrupt the attack of that enemy. It wasn't supposed to actually connect with the 50 damage. It was just supposed to interrupt there. Which is good enough in my book. We don't really have any great items here. Magician's Wand is a huge detriment to any build it's in, unless you combine it with the Magician's Top Hat, because it just slows you down so much. You pretty much can never use two abilities shortly after one another, just... No, you don't want that. You pretty much never want this item. Even though it's great damage. 20% extra damage is fantastic, but the downside is just too huge. We might still come across the top hat, though. We haven't seen our shop yet. We haven't beaten the boss yet. We shall see. We might even find a supply crate. Again, that'd be fantastic. We could just spend a bunch of money and health, just pump it all into the shop, potentially finding that. So I don't want to make a decision here yet. If I can't get a hold of the wand, I will probably buy either a Tattered Scroll, or if I can get a hold of the Stanza of Frost, I can buy the Stanza of Flames, and it will be a decent damage up, but nothing wild by any means. It only upticks our Searing Crown after all, and the Glacial Spear then in that case. So not a great Nox by any means. I have seen much better. Okay, let's use this to proc the barrels and irritate our foes, and then knock them into pits, and we are good to go. Oh, hello, supply crate! Would you look at that? Also, Kasim's Aerial Cloak, which is fantastic. Mirror Shield generally is terrible into Sura when playing super aggressively, because it procs all the time without you really being able to do anything about that. But no, I'd say let's get rid of the Jade, whatever the hell it's called. Jade's Gem Locator, I believe. We find a candy and a sprite. Those are stackable, so decent choices, decent purchases. I believe the backpack we only keep for now while purchasing, and then we get rid of it later. So we gotta stack all of our defensive items somewhere. Now I gotta keep in mind that there's an item cap for items lying around, and at some point, the more items you drop, items start vanishing in the order that you drop them in. So I want to drop the least important stuff first. I believe they drop in the order that you drop them in. I am not sure. I'm just trying to judge by my experience doing this kind of stuff. So I think I'd want to drop the Mirror Shield next. I think it's quite a useless item, even though it is a defensive item. So I should drop it somewhere else probably to keep that max HP going. Okay, and then what's more useless? Probably the sweets? No, probably just this. Straight up, it's only 100. Okay, can I drop it in here? No, right. Yeah, it's gonna float in the air, or it's gonna be bounced back on the ground or into a wall. Heavy Travel Jacket is a lot of defense. That is a shit ton of defense. Now, if we do actually end up picking that up, we have to drop another item that's not so good. We're just trading at this point. Okay, let's drop the travel jacket, pick up the Augur of Poetry for 100. Another defensive item. Drop that. We find a... Drop this again just in case to reset that timer, potentially. I believe these count as defensive as well, I'm not sure. Memory Chainmail is very strong. Kasim's is also very strong. I really want to have that at the end of the day. There's still nothing wild in here. It's kind of concerning, so... Let's buy a Sprite. I think Sprites are better than the candies. That was a brilliant balloon proc there, by the way. Okay, drop the Sprite. Oh boy. Pick up the tail. Still nothing has vanished yet. Just keep the Kasim's and the Travi Jekyll. I think I just want to keep them, just in case. They also work decently well with the Blades of Sympathy, even though we don't hit a lot, so Blades of Sympathy isn't typically very strong for this build. It does count as a defensive item though, and it's a very strong one. Very good to keep that. Oh, I keep slaying that name, I just can't pronounce it for some reason. Brilliant Balloon, on the other hand, it's a very weak defensive item. So let's drop that, pick back up the the Travel Jacket is going on today. For a lot of extra armor, keep the Mirror Shield in check. These items are dropped too far apart, honestly, I can't really see all of them at any given time. Now let's drop the backpack for now, I think. And then invest into sweets because they're stackable. Okay, we find a combination item. the Unicorn, which isn't super powerful. But it makes us very fast and fancy. And I think that should be it. I think we should leave it at that for now. We don't really need to train more health here. I do like this current loadout. It is pretty damn good. There's a little bit of everything in here. Nothing super wild by any means. Unfortunately, we keep finding things that don't stack. Yeah, we find 1 of 5. Great. Where's the rest? I'd love to see more. I'm not gonna pick back up the candy, as it wouldn't be super impactful by any means. I'm not gonna pick up the Sprite either, because even when stacking 5 of those, which rarely ever happens, mind I add to that statement, still not super powerful by any means. I think the rest is fine. The gem finder would be helpful for clearing out the rest of the area, but if I find another chest and I drop an item here and trade for the gem finder, I might not be able to pick that initial item back up, because maybe I destroy a chest and it drops like 3 items, and then I'm in a bit of a dilemma losing an item that I really wanted to keep. Unicorn isn't super powerful, so I can drop this for now. Pick up the gem locator, and I won't be having any dilemmas there. Why so? Because again, the Unicorn isn't super powerful in the first place. I don't have to mourn its loss. Oh god. Oh, what a room. Cover some distance, use the horses for distraction purposes. Use this to destroy projectiles. Distance, cover, horses. Just distract them. Get rid of the mimic there. Okay. It's all about buying more time. Buying more room. Oh, that is a very nice damage up. I like that a lot. Also, thanks for the ward. I could trade that, theoretically, but there's nothing to trade here at any point. Just try and find as many gems as possible. Infinity Marble is fantastic in this build. I'm so glad I picked that up. So glad I could even find that in the first place. Also, Kasim's is fantastic, as I believe I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Wow, that looks very crowded up there. Fancy though, it looks quite nice. Do I still care about the Unicorn? I can't even see it in there anymore, so let's check that it's still there. I'm just curious. Yes, it is still here. All of the items appear to still be here. Not sure any of them vanished so far. I don't think so. So I'm gonna be... I don't think I want to trade. I don't think I want to buy a lot on the last floor. I think I'm very happy with the current build, and it can definitely remain like that. I don't care about making any further investments, so I think I'm just gonna kick this off the plane. Get rid of the wallet as well, which still is a 12% boost to the heavy travel jacket, and plenty of money for the Helm of Midas, and Yuffie's Shawl, Kasim's Eric Clark, Shackle Locket, and so on and so forth. I just want to fill up that gem count right now. Not for the healing, just because, really. Just because it would look nice to have 999 with this, not just 500 something. Though I have found plenty of gems so far, I just want slightly more. Also love the Unicorn, it looks great, it feels great, makes me so fast. Makes me feel like a NASCAR some shade, I don't know, it's great. Love it. Also, I can bounce it, which looks much more impressive than the Helm of Midas. Definitely gotta admit. Okay. Let's leave it at that and just move on. I'm very happy with how all of this turned out. Of course, I could try and optimize way more towards the damage side of things, but I'm very happy with the defensive side of things here as well. Let's be honest, this build is very utility and defense focused, and I think that's nice. It's nice for a change. Man, that deals so much damage. Now we also have a little bit of extra consistent damage increase thanks to the Golden Saber. We might also find a Mimic here. No, we did not. In the case of finding a Mimic, that would have been quite insane with all this stuff over there. and then still having the synergy of supply crate, plus healing, plus world of vigor lying around. Yeah, you can optimize the shite out of that, the ever-living shit, but I don't really feel like doing that right now. I feel like this run has already been brung home. Been brought? It's been brought home, right? Yeah. I think so. I am quite a dum-dum though, I might be wrong about that. Still can't exactly pick any of these, so might as well screw it. Words are hard. Talking is difficult. English is already a fairly easy language, but I'm just bad with words, man. I can't help it. My brain just can't memorize. Things like word constructs. What are sentences, right? Even short words are sometimes too much. What is the meaning of having a mother tongue anyway, right? What's the meaning of a first language when you can't even talk that properly? Is it really my first language if I can't even talk it fluently most often because I stutter all the time? Or I mix up different words because, or pronunciations because I simply like using different words to describe the same thing, and then in my brain I just mix them up because I can't decide. Is it still my mother tongue? Can I still technically speak the language fluently, or is it just, I don't know, retardation holding me back? What is it? What's the issue here? Curious. Would have to talk to a linguist, is that what you call them? I believe so. Someone well adversed in the matter of languages. Someone definitely more well-spoken than I. I hate talking sometimes. Like, I like talking, but I'm just so bad at it. It's like driving. I consider myself an average driver, maybe slightly above average. I'm not horrible by any means. But I feel horrible because I can't do certain things that I'd love to be able to do. Like moving into a really tight parking lot. Backwards as well. Driving backwards is a huge deal to me. Damn, this seems to proc a lot on the Seismic Entry. I would love to be a good driver. I try to be a better driver. I'm just not good at learning, apparently. Okay, let's get that, because it stacks with something we already got, and it's a very strong defensive effect. Also stacks with the travel jacket. The heavy travel jacket. However the hell I named this earlier. It's called a heavy travel jacket. Should have equipped the ball lightning here, and then shot it off immediately because it deals an insane amount of damage. Incomparable, really, to anything we already got. Might as well do it now. Gonna have plenty of chances to do so. Hate that attack, but don't really care when I can just damage boost through. Come on, horses, just a little closer, please, dude. Okay, I'll use the bow lightning. I won't be happy about it, but I'll use it. Using the steering crown defensively, just to potentially get rid of that freeze. This is a very tight spot. Man, I just want to re-equip my Glacial Spear. I'm not fast enough. Don't jump over my horses, how dare you! How dare you be so evasive! Bye-bye. Rest in pieces, boy. You can't keep up with the unicorn. With the power of love and friendship and... I don't know, ice cream, love and rainbows. Let's go! That was great. Quite a fun run. Nothing wild by any means, to be honest. I did enjoy it though. It's not terrible, let's put it that way. I had plenty of ways to cope there. Plenty of things to hold me back from dying or overcommitting. So that's great. I love that. I don't totally hate this Arcana anymore, okay? But you have to admit, it's just so wonky. And you have to play it in the right build. If you don't, it's completely useless. If you use it as your main Arcana, that just seems like an impossible task, honestly. Unless you want to play on hardcore difficulty, pretty much only using this to kill your enemies. Yes, it deals good damage, but it has a fucking abysmal range, an abysmal area of use. Just absolutely terrible. As an AoE boy, it's absolutely terrible in corridors. It's just so terrible, but I guess in a setting like this, with a backup plan, or maybe two, and pretty much with a guarantee to not fail your run, with all these relics and these nice synergies, yeah, it's okay. It's not horrendous. I've played with worse Arcana in the past, though as a standard it kind of fails. It doesn't generate a lot of signature. It doesn't exactly support you super well in any given situation. Like, you have to have a very specific situation for this to become worthwhile. And it doesn't deal fantastic damage. It does deal good damage. It's just that you can't exactly hit it easily. Unlike something like an explosive fireball. Even in an unenhanced version, it's quite simple to use. Maybe if the horses jumped an additional time instead of jumping in place on the enhanced version of this, it'd be slightly more useful. Or if the horses had a way larger area they could cover, not this tiny-ass jump in front of you. But I am the one who knocks. I am the horse master. I am the unicorn. I have become horse. And I can use these horses from now on. I view this unicorn facade, this full horse build, as completed. My task to be achieved, and I have become now, the ultimate horse master of Wizard of Legend. I am the horse wizard. And with that having been said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's run. I certainly did. It was maybe a strong 7, maybe an 8 even, in terms of how fun this build was, how fun this run was, how fun the events that transpired were. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I wish you all a good morning, a good day, or a good night, wherever you are, and bye-bye!